vibe. Come let we lime, come let we vibe. Lime vibe. Oh, lime vibe.
3. So good afternoon once again, everybody. This is Yuri Kemp with another Lime Vibe podcast. I'm here with my host today, my guest today, sorry, Miss Lynda Edwards, living in Orlando, Florida. Is it right, Lynda? By the way of Jamaica. How you doing, Lynda?
I'm doing well, Yuri. We've been talking about this for so long. I'm excited that we're finally doing it.
Thank you, Lynda. Thank you. Lynda is an author, and she has written several books, and she's going to talk to us today about her literature and how she sees her literature taking shape over the next 10, 15 years or so. So, Lynda, first, where were you born, particularly?
I was born in Mandeville, Jamaica, which is in the mountains. And I was born, 1967.
67. Okay,
Yeah.
so you know the Maroons, and you grew up with the Maroons, I would assume.
The Maroons were in the cockpit country, yes, not
Okay.
far from where we are, because we used to go, people in Mandeville used to go to the South Coast instead of the North Coast of Jamaica. South Coast wasn't so well known, but it's beautiful. There's a South Coast, what they call the South Coast Road, and it goes from Kingston down along the South Coast into Treasure Beach. And I think that is the prettiest drive I've been anywhere in the Caribbean.
Gotcha. Mandeville, South Beach. Okay. So how is it like growing up as a white Jamaican? Of course, I mean, I can imagine if you've gone through the 60s and the 70s with all the racial tensions in between the United States and whatnot. But how does it feel growing up being a white Jamaican woman?
Well, I have to be honest with you, I didn't really understand prejudice until I came to America.
Wow.
I didn't know that there was any difference. I mean, I was raised with that in Jamaica in the 1960s when I was born. My family had married into, Chinese people, Black people. I mean, we were a mixed race society, so I didn't really understand the whole white thing growing up in Jamaica. And I'm also Jewish, so that came with its own connotations as well.
Okay.
But I remember getting married and coming to the States and calling somebody to ask about an apartment. And when they heard my accent, they said, don't bother calling.
Wow.
And I remember saying to a friend of mine, I said, I don't understand the reaction. And she said, oh, they think you're Black. And I said, what do you mean they think I'm Black? And she said, because you're Jamaican, you sound Jamaican, they think you're Black. And that's the first time it ever really hit me. And that wasn't the only time it happened. I mean, I've had Black Americans say things to me thinking that I was a Black Jamaican. So, and I mean, it's quite interesting because it's almost like being the fly on the wall.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't really. I don't really think much in terms of color because that's not how I was raised.
Okay.
And frankly, the older I get, the more offended I get by it. I had somebody, I wrote a screenplay recently about Marcus Garvey and my great granduncle Louis Ashenheim, who defended Marcus Garvey in a case. And a producer asked to have a Zoom call with me because he wanted to discuss it with me. And when he saw me, he said, "You're Lynda Edwards?" And I said, "Yes." And I think before he could control himself, he said, how did a white woman write a story like this?
Wow.
And I thought to myself, just be cool. Don't say anything.
Yeah.
And then I thought, you know what? I'm really tired of this. So I said, first of all, my skin did not write this. A Jamaican woman wrote it.
Yes.
And moreover, a marginalized Jamaican who recognized another marginalized Jamaican wrote it.
Yes. Wow. But you do admit that you're an oddity, right? I mean, you're a special kind of individual, right? I shouldn't say oddity, but a special individual. You realize that, right, Lynda?
No.
You don't realize that? But
No.
even
In
when I
what
first
way?
met you, I was,
What way do you mean?
even when I first met you, I was shocked that I was just stunned. I said, "Wow, is this a Jamaican woman?" I was like shocked, and then I looked at your writing. I said, "Wait, you're speaking from a different perspective. You're speaking from a perspective like someone what I would speak from. You're speaking from a whole different generation. You're speaking with such a passion, and you're writing with such a passion that only persons who have lived through the struggle could actually appreciate that. But looking at you, it doesn't appear as if you went through the quote unquote struggle. You know, I don't want to be offensive, but the struggle.
No, I know. I'm not quite sure what struggle you're referring to.
Mm,
In the 1960s,
mhm,
Jamaica went through a more turbulent time than I think any of the other islands. I mean, Grenada may have gone through it
mm,
in the 80s to a certain extent,
mhm,
but Jamaica went through this whole turning point of um, where it became not so much about color and class, but it became about wealth.
wealth. Yes, yes.
And that I mean I remember that. I remember you know, burglar bars going up on the houses for the first time
Mm,
and security guards being hired. And I didn't understand that because I
mm,
didn't understand the animosity
mm,
um, of where that all came from. I
mm,
mean, in 1967, I was born. So in 1977,
mm,
I was 10 years old.
mhm, mhm,
Um, in 1975, 1976, things got really difficult in Jamaica. A lot of people left.
mm.
Um, a lot of people realized when they left that they needed to come back, and they came back.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I don't. I mean, I don't really know how to answer that because I've known myself all my life, so I'm not an oddity to myself.
Mm,
Um, the way
mhm.
I write based on my love of Jamaica and 8 generations of my family being
Yes,
born in Jamaica. That's very deep roots.
yes.
I don't have roots in anywhere but Jamaica.
Mhm,
So I no, I don't think of myself as an oddity.
mm.
I try not to get offended when people say because I understand. I
Yeah,
do understand, that I'm the white unicorn in the room.
yeah, yeah.
But, my history is the history of Jamaica. It's
Mhm.
Portuguese,
Yes,
Jew,
yes.
it's English, Scottish, Irish.
Mhm,
It's, African. I embrace my African roots because my culture
mhm,
is is African and it's European.
mm,
One of my favorite sayings is that um, we learned the art of storytelling from
mhm.
our African heritage.
Yes,
But Europeans taught us the value of the written word,
yes, indeed.
and great orators were given pen and paper to record this amazing history
Yes,
that we're now taking pride in and
yes,
that we should take pride
yes,
in. And
yes. That's good.
that's, that's not black or white. That's a society that was created.
Yeah, that's human nature. That's human culture. You're right.
Yeah.
That's a good answer, Linda. That's a good answer. So, I mean, you spoke a lot about the 70s and 80s and how it being a turning point in Jamaican history. One of your professors from the University of the West Indies, Professor Errol Miller, have you heard of him?
Yeah, I know he is.
Yeah, yeah, he's a brilliant scholar. I used to work with his wife when I used to work at the Inter-American Development Bank years back. And
Ooh.
yeah, yeah, it's a small world, is it, right? And he wrote a book just recently about the turning point that happened in the 70s and 80s with regard to all the politics that was happening in Jamaica. Do you think that the politics really shaped most of those attitudes back in the Jamaica in the 70s and 80s, or was just the time and the change? It was just a change in culture overall. Do you think politics played a part, or do you think it was just a general shift in culture that brought all this turmoil in Jamaica?
Wow, that's a great question. And it's actually the subject of my fourth book that I'm now in
Ah,
the process of writing.
okay.
Um, that's an interesting question, and I'm not 100% sure to how to answer it because I'm researching it all now. I
Mm,
can answer it from my perspective.
okay.
It was a painful and difficult time for me.
Mm,
It was a painful and difficult time facing the realities of what was behind it and facing the realities of what was causing it and what the outcome of it was. Part of which was I was a stranger in my own country, which I did not appreciate.
Wow. Explain that. Explain that. Like strange in your own country. What do you mean by that, Lynda?
Well, because, I got told all the time that, are you Jamaican? I got asked, by Jamaicans, are you Jamaican? And I kept having to remind people, I mean, do you not know the motto of Jamaica, out of many one people? It just got to the point where I remember I remember being so offended by a young girl who asked me that question. She must have been about 17 or 18. And she asked me how I learned her language so well.
Wow.
And I said, sweetie, I've been speaking it long before you. And she says, you were born here? I said, yes, I was born there. I was born in Jamaica. I said, most of my family is born in Jamaica. All of my family is born in Jamaica. Well, I don't believe you. So I blasted her with some Jamaican bad words. And I said, do you believe me now?
Lynda, I don't believe you did that. Did you do that?
I most certainly did. I had the nickname of Peppermouth when I was a child.
Okay, okay. Or you like the curse words?
Well, I don't usually use them. When I'm at a loss for words is when I use them.
Yeah.
But
so I don't blame anybody.
just
Use all of your
offended.
words. I don't blame
Sorry?
anybody. Use all of your words. Use all of it. It's better than showing fists, actually. Use your words.
I was just offended, and I was so hurt and disappointed and angry. I remember feeling those three emotions. That this girl was not accepting me as one of her own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to say too, your inflection of your voice, really, it sounds more African as well, too, So it's kind of shocking too. So it's not just your parents, but when I hear you over the phone, without even seeing you, your inflection sounds African. It doesn't sound from a white perspective or Caucasian perspective.
Well, you have to understand, I grew up in the country. Mandeville was considered the country. So there's Kingston Patois and then there's country Patois.
Okay.
And I learned country Patois, but you have to understand something. Jamaican roots are African roots. I've tapped into my African roots during my writing. When I was writing Friendship Estate, my second book, I was convinced a lot of that came from my African roots and that bind that I have to the ancestors. And I just am able to. There's one scene in Friendship Estate that was very, very difficult for me to write. It was at the beginning of the book, and I remember writing it, and I walked away from the book for 3 weeks because I just could not go back to sit down and go through that. And one day there was just this compelling force that said, finish it, finish it, finish it. And I went back and I finished it. When I was writing Justice Delayed, I was writing about Marcus Garvey and I was writing about Louis Ashenaim. Now, I'm related to the Ashenaims. He would have been my great granduncle. But when I was writing it, I felt like I had Marcus on one shoulder, Louis on the other, kind of looking over and saying, type that, write that. And some of the scenes I walked to, finished typing and I looked at them and I'll be honest, I had no idea where they came from. I had no idea how I knew those things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just the inspiration came over you. So how's your writing going overall anyway, Lynda? How's the writing going?
It's going well. I try to write every weekend. As a woman, we have a lot of responsibilities. I do have a job. I have a husband. I have a home. And, we West Indian women, we kind of take charge of the house and make sure our husbands are well taken care of.
Yes.
So I try to focus on that. But I write when inspiration hits. And I've been finding inspiration in the strangest of places these days. I'm doing something I've never done before,
Mhm.
which is write 2 books at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's not something I would recommend, I have to be honest with you.
Mm.
But out of Justice Delayed
Mhm.
came this desire, this huge, huge desire. And also meeting a new friend in Barbados
Mm.
who I learned his story and it just sparked something in me.
Mhm.
So I've started this new story, which has come out of the sensibilities of Justice Delayed.
Mhm.
And it's the story of 3 brothers that leave Portugal
Okay.
during the Spanish Inquisition in the 1650s.
Mhm.
And one goes to Barbados, the older one goes to Barbados, the
Mhm.
second one goes to Jamaica, and the third one goes to South Carolina.
Mhm.
Because there are a lot of ties between all these 3 countries.
Mm.
And I wanted to nobody knows these stories.
Mm.
Nobody knows how connected these islands in America are and the
Yes.
history that we all share because nobody really cares about the Caribbean.
Mm.
But the Caribbean is where the worldwide trading system began. We are
Yes.
where
Yes.
the
Yes.
world collided
Yes.
with such force that it created the society that became the Society of the Caribbean Islands.
Yes. Yes.
So
Indeed.
we are not given the due that we should be given
Mhm.
for the thinkers and the society and the people that came out of the experiences that they had.
Yeah.
So in this book, I'm going from the 1650s,
Mhm.
ironically, to 1976,
Mhm.
and talking about what happened in Barbados, what happened in Jamaica, what happened in South Carolina,
Mhm.
the United States,
Mhm.
all in 1976.
Mhm.
So it starts with the struggle of these brothers and it ends up with how their families ended up in these 3 places.
Mhm. 1976. I guess 1976 was an important year for you, really.
It was a pivotal year for sure. I think it was a pivotal year for the entire Caribbean.
Mm.
And it's again something we don't talk about enough, and we're not we do need to have some kind of truth and reconciliation
Mm.
throughout the entire Caribbean about 1976.
So what happened in 76, Lynda? What exactly happened?
Well, in 1976, there were a couple of different things. A Cuban plane went down in Barbados, was shot down in Barbados,
Mm.
that the CIA was accused of doing.
Mm. Mm.
Grenada started to become the little Cuba of the Caribbean, which frightened which
Yeah, United
frightened
States.
a lot of people
Mhm.
in the Caribbean, in islands like Barbados, St. Lucia. They were made nervous about this.
Mhm.
And in Jamaica, we really saw the fight take place on the ground between the CIA and
Yes.
Russia.
Yes.
And Russia.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, Jamaicans were just the pawn in that, but the
Yes.
fight
Yes.
really
Yes.
was between the CIA and Russia.
Yes, and the KGB, yes. I'm glad you
Yeah.
mentioned that, Lynda, because another pivotal year, decades later, was in 1991, 92, when the Berlin Wall came down and communism was over. And then the United States dropped everybody in the Caribbean. So, but going back to 76, I'm glad we're talking about 76 because you're going to paint a good picture of how politics was shaped in the region, because people don't realize that the United States controlled practically every leader in the Caribbean and Latin America at that time. And they were installing, they were putting them in, they were taking.
Well, no, according to my research, no, they
Mm.
did not. It was evenly matched between Russia and CIA.
Oh,
The
okay.
problem is what happened was Jamaica specifically became the war zone, became the ground where the final war was waged.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Cuba had already gone to Russia.
Russia, yeah.
A lot of Venezuela was on the way, south of Panama. A lot of those places were much more prone towards Russian ideology.
Mm-hmm.
And America was actually losing its footing
Mm-hmm.
in the Caribbean islands.
Mm-hmm.
And they realized that the only thing that they had that they could beat the Russians with were two things.
What?
Their economic power
Yes.
and their the other one just went right out of my head, which was very, very important. Tried to remember. But anyway, it'll come back to me. But
Diplomacy?
it was basically their economic power
Mhm.
that they would use to control because they were losing footing. Remember, Castro kicked the United Fruit Company out of Cuba. He kicked
Yeah.
the mob out of Cuba. He kicked everything that, these tentacles from the United States were reaching into.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, they were being told, goodbye, go, let's, we don't want to have anything to do with you.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing that saved Jamaica, especially, was our African roots. We were tired of being told what to do. We were tired of being, you can only sell at this market from this time to this time. Government controls this, government controls that.
Mhm.
We weren't interested we wanted our freedom.
Yes.
And I think the African spirit in all of us at that time
Mhm.
saw communism as another form of slavery.
Mhm.
Now, not to say that the capitalist system is not a form of slavery either, because you're, a slave to the next Nike shoe.
Yeah, indeed.
But it's a different kind. It's a
Mm.
different kind, and it's not as it's it didn't offend the sensibilities as much as outright communism does.
Totalitarianism, yeah.
Yeah.
I can imagine. So in Jamaica, who was the communist and who was the capitalist? I guess Yaga was the capitalist, right?
I'm sorry?
I guess Edward Yaga was a capitalist, right? And Norman Manley was more like the communist.
Well, it's very interesting that you should say that. Because Edward Seaga always said that he was a socialist,
Hmm.
and he was a capitalist socialist.
Hmm.
And Michael Manley always said that he was a socialist.
Hmm.
And I think what happened was that word socialist
Mm-hmm.
became the watchword.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, everybody realized that, maybe socialism wasn't so bad.
Mm.
Socialism, you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Yes.
And
Yes.
socialism was helping the weakest link.
Mm.
And I think what happened was the capitalist people did not see any form of socialism in their vocabulary,
Yes.
even though you can look at several forms of socialism within the capitalist society.
Yeah. Yeah. They saw
Um,
socialism as as the baby communist, the baby communism, right? Yeah.
right. Whereas the communists
Mhm.
saw socialism as communist light, and
Yeah.
they didn't see a lane for it either.
Mhm.
So I think that's an interesting dichotomy.
Mhm.
My third book that I've just finished is called I Am Cuba.
Mm.
And it actually takes on that very question, because I'll tell you a little bit about it. I really wanted to kick people in the teeth with that whole socialist, communist,
Okay.
capitalist thing.
So tell us about it, Lynda. Tell us about it. Tell us about the book. I Am Cuba.
I Am Cuba.
Mhm.
And it is the premise of the book
Mhm.
is that the island of Cuba sits on the lost city of Atlantis.
Mm.
And in Atlantis is a very precious mineral
Mhm.
that the whole world is trying to get a hold of.
Mhm.
And the mineral is discovered by this young, poor farmer, cocoa farmer, who, because he's a brilliant scientist, he's accepted into the same school that Fidel Castro was accepted into.
Mhm.
And they go to school together. Fidel goes his way. This other guy goes another way. And they continue to be friends.
Mhm.
And the friendship actually costs his friend his position in the museum.
Wow.
But what happens is communism comes along and they realize that they have something here.
Mhm.
The problem is Russia is the only one that will take it because, you know, the problems with the United States propped up from a lack of understanding, in my opinion, but that's just me.
Mhm.
So what happens is they have this, in the 1980s, they have this young gentleman who is a Cuban American come back to Cuba as a CIA person
Mhm.
and falls in love with a girl who is tasked with finding the source of this mineral.
Mhm.
And they have some pretty good arguments about capitalism versus communism.
Mhm.
And they come to an understanding. And I think that understanding is very important.
Mhm.
And I will tell you what the understanding they come to is that it's time for the Caribbean to rise.
Mhm.
It's time for the Caribbean to have a say in their own economies, in their own political systems,
Mhm.
without interference from these superpowers,
Yeah.
because no superpower has ever done the Caribbean a favor.
Mhm. It's only used us, right? That's
We've
pawns.
only, from the day the first European landed there,
Mhm.
it has been nothing but exploitation and gain and take, and it left us as the stepchild of the rest of the world. You
Yeah.
know, we are the Cinderellas of the world, which is very, very sad because we've given so much
Yes.
and not been credited for what we've been given.
The
So,
vice president of the most powerful country in the world is of Jamaican heritage. Kamala Harris. Yeah.
which she doesn't really acknowledge.
Mm.
So, and you know what, you can't blame her either for that because
Why? Why not? Why can't we blame her?
she identifies, because she's an American.
Mm.
She doesn't have any of the Jamaican sensibilities of growing up on the island,
That's true.
you know, of eating oysters right out of the sea, of of going crabbing, and you know, there's a Jamaica, being born in a country or being from a country
Mhm.
does not give you the experience of actually living there and growing there.
Yeah.
And when you live in a country and you experience it, you taste it, you smell it, interact with it, that's when you become one with it. Not because your grandfather or your great grandfather happened to be from that country, or even your father. If it's not what you experience, you can't identify with it and you can't appreciate it.
Mm. I got you. So she has nothing Caribbean worthy.
Not in my opinion.
Wow. I'm so proud of her, you know. I'm so proud of her being one of our sisters who made it, you know. But I
Well,
could
that's a different thing. That's a different thing.
Mm.
I mean, being the first Black female
Mm.
vice president,
Mm.
that's something that means something in America.
Mm.
Doesn't mean anything in the Caribbean. Been there,
Yeah.
done that.
Yeah, yeah. She has no ties to it at all, you know.
But
And
why should she? Why should she?
Mm.
That's not what her experience is. She
Mm.
was raised in America,
Mm.
and she knows everything America. She's experienced everything America. She can speak to being a marginalized woman in America. She can speak to being a marginalized Black woman in America.
Mm.
Right? Who's to say that had she been raised in Jamaica, her experiences would have been totally different?
Yeah, yeah. That's true. That's true. That's true. Okay, let me stop fawning over Kamala Harris then. So I'm really a Republican, to be honest with you. You know, I'm just proud that she was someone from my heritage. And there's another lady too, lady Karine Pierre. She's the White House press secretary now. Karine Pierre, that's her name. Karine Jean-Pierre. Yeah.
I am not very politically, I'm very politically minded,
Mm,
but I'm so disappointed in American politics as a
mm.
whole that I really try to stay out of it.
I
Because,
got you. Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
I'll shut.
yeah, I don't, the next person that tells me in America that I come from a third world country, I'm going to tell them to turn on their news.
They tell you that? They tell you that to your face?
Oh, yeah.
Oh wow. That's kind of racist and bigoted. You get
Welcome to
America.
America. Welcome to America.
You know, so I lived in South Florida for a while myself, and I haven't experienced that. Maybe because they were threatened, but if they were said to me, it would have been a fight. But I've never experienced that. The only time I've gotten into an argument with a group of friends of mine when we were in college, I was right at the head of the American invasion in Iraq, and I was surprised how many black people were for the invasion. You would think that black people would be like anti-George Bush and anti-Republican. No, they said no, go and invade Iraq because how they bombed those World Trade Centers and the World Trade Towers. You know, someone needed to get punched in their mouth. I was like, wow, okay, fine. And I was
That's
pretty
the
shocked at how that
commonality.
galvanized Americans, you know.
But that's exactly what I was talking about. That's the commonality of being born in America.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, the one thing that we in the Caribbean were able to do, which America is struggling to do,
Mm,
is we found a common footing.
mhm,
The struggle to
mhm.
survive in Jamaica, in the Caribbean,
Yes,
that brought us together and
yes.
created a society of inclusion, which was not based on color.
Mhm,
And the damage that, you know, colonialism tried to do, which was create irreparable divisions based on class and color,
yes,
we in the Caribbean rejected
yes.
and used it as a common bond.
Mhm,
To, I mean, we all talk the same, we all think the same. You know, the only my color is not when I go to Jamaica and
mhm,
I'm in Kingston or, you know, I'm around the people that know me, my color is not an issue. You know,
mhm,
I go into a building, oh, you're so and so's, you know, granddaughter, you're so and so's cousin, blah, blah, blah. It's not, it becomes more of, it's called, I like to say it's a game Jamaicans play called 6 Degrees of Separation.
mhm,
Within 6 turns, any Jamaican will find some commonality,
mhm.
whether it be in friends, family, or experiences.
Yes, yes.
And that's something I found throughout the entire Caribbean,
Mm.
that you have, you know, once they hear, oh, you're Jamaican, let me tell you about last time I was there. Or, you know, there's some commonality,
Mhm,
you know, when I go, I've been to Barbados, oh, man, my cricketers are better than your cricketers, and that's a whole another another argument, but it's based on a commonality, if you
mhm.
understand, a shared
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, yeah.
And the only time like I said, I've faced any kind of division has been in America,
Mm,
because they have not learned what we have had to live with
mhm, mhm.
throughout the Caribbean, in that, man, if we didn't band together when we were abandoned, and you have to understand, as you said before, everybody abandoned us.
Yes, yes.
First it was the Europeans when sugar died. They
Mm,
abandoned us, right? Just picked up. There was a 5-year period in 19 in the late 1800s,
mm,
just after the end of slavery,
mhm,
in all the Caribbean islands,
mm,
where nobody could get credit from England. We couldn't
mm,
buy anything.
mm,
Sugar was worth nothing
mm,
because they were getting it cheaper from Brazil.
mm,
And people were dying in the streets, you
mm,
know, African, Englishman, Jew, Catholic, everybody was just absolutely dying in the streets.
mm,
And I think that was the genesis of when the Caribbean came together. And, you know,
mm,
the people came together and said, look, this can't work.
mm,
We don't take care of ourselves, nobody's going to take care of us.
mm.
And it's ironic 100 years later, Russia and America move in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've always been where the fight has taken place, which is very sad.
And I don't know if you realize it, we're back to that same spot again now, Lynda, because we're trying to band together now again against two main issues that are scourging this region. Crime and climate change. They're trying to band together now on these two issues right now. And they can't seem to come together and put any kind of, well, they're trying now. They're trying to put together a single clear message to the rest of the world that we have problems here. And I think first and foremost is climate change for sure. Because as you've seen with the amount of hurricanes, Hurricane Dorian, Hurricane Maria, they've ravaged these countries, and we aren't even close to half of doing the damage that are creating these mega storms. It's basically from the large countries like the United States and Europe and China, but we're suffering as a result of it. And I think they're trying to come up with a clear, coherent message to take to the rest of the world, particularly the G20 countries, that hey, you're killing us with carbon.
With your industry,
Yeah.
Mia Motley of Barbados, she's the leader to watch in the Caribbean.
Yeah, you love her, don't you?
I admire her.
Everybody
greatly.
loves them.
And funny enough, she's a huge proponent of Marcus Garvey.
Yeah.
She is somebody that has been able to pull the Bajans together. And not only the Bajans, she has everybody in the Eastern Caribbean basically following her lead.
Yeah.
And she made a speech at the UN, and I urge all of your listeners to look it up on YouTube. Made a speech to the UN about climate change, and basically said that. She said, again, you guys are causing these problems, and we in the Caribbean are paying the price for it.
Yes.
So now you're going to have to step up, and you're going to have to help us. I hope that something happens. I personally feel that until the Caribbean starts telling our stories in our own voices, our stories of inclusion, our stories of the society that we created, I don't think that we are going to be taken seriously until people know exactly what we have done for the world.
Yeah.
And we cannot, all the Caribbean knows, all the world knows about us is sea, sun, and sand.
Yeah.
Drunken pirates and high rascals.
Yeah. Don't forget the drugs. Don't forget the narcotics.
Well, that's what I'm saying, the high rascals. But the Rastafarians religion is very closely associated with the Jewish religion, with the Muslim religion. So people don't know that. People don't know that. So it's a very sad state of affairs for the Caribbean. And I think if we have leaders like Mia Motley, who is now investing quite heavily in a new renewable, sustainable industry, which is our stories. She's invested quite a bit in the film fund in Barbados, encouraging films to be made there. We're trying to encourage other countries to do that as well. With the filming of Justice Delayed, I'm very proud of the fact that we've built a coalition of investors from the Caribbean and from the diaspora who understand the importance of the story and understand why it needs to be told.
Yeah.
I'm not begging anything from anybody. So I understand that we are going to need, American and UK technology at some point.
Yes.
But the story has to be told in our voices because it's our story.
Yes. And speaking about Rastafarianism, what happened to your first book, Redemption Songs? How is that going? Is that still on the shelves and available for consumption?
It is. I have to tell you, I'm incredibly proud of my two books that I have published at the moment. Redemption Songs to date has sold over 4,000 copies, and it's a self-published book. Friendship Estate has sold over 6,000 copies, and that has they're still available, Amazon and anywhere that books are sold. Sadly, they're not as available in the Caribbean as I would like them to be. But again, that's because, you know, West Indian writers, we don't have a home. We don't have reliable publishers. We don't have reliable editors. We don't have reliable managers, all of these types of things. So it's very difficult to find a home for our stories, even
Yes.
with the Caribbean,
Yeah.
which is again very, very sad.
Yeah, yeah. The only other person I know of that's really interested in Caribbean literature is Steve Russell from the Caribbean Conference for Literary Arts.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You know what Steve Russell?
I know Steve very well. In fact, I participated in the conference that he did last year.
Okay.
I flew to LA.
Right.
Yeah. I flew to LA and I did 2 events for him, and I spoke at a class about telling our stories in our own voices.
Yes, yes, yes. Steve's doing God's work, isn't he?
He's an amazing person, and you know, he's a younger person, and but he's a very, very old soul, and I think he's somebody that again is very connected to his roots.
Yes.
Because he is determined to tell Caribbean stories.
Yes.
You know, this is not a topic you want to get me on, because it's one I'm very, very bitter about.
No,
I mean,
go talk. I love it. Good content.
Even in Miami, there's a Miami book festival that they have a Caribbean corner. I don't see them doing anything with it. And there's many people living in Miami as they are living in the Caribbean.
Yes.
So again, our voices are not being heard. Our stories are not being told. I am so tired of pitching I Am Cuba. And I thought, you know, I Am Cuba would be far more marketable than either of my Jamaican books. I'm so tired of pitching it and hearing people say, well, we don't know how to market you. We don't know what to do with you. You only write about the Caribbean. Yeah, I only write about the Caribbean.
But a story is a story, though, Lynda.
You would think. You would. But, you know, I'm honestly beginning to believe that I am not the unicorn here. The entire Caribbean is the unicorn, and the rest of the world really has no idea what to do with it.
Oh,
so,
man.
Yeah.
Don't be discouraged, man. You just gotta keep going, man. Don't be discouraged. I am involved in several groups on Facebook, and writers from all over the world, they're experiencing the same thing. They just can't get their books out and to publish and get their books out to market and promotion. So let's keep at it, Lynda. I believe in your stories. I believe in what you're.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You've always been a huge support, and I do appreciate that.
Yes.
But again, I honestly think there is a roadblock with anything Caribbean. You know, our stories, our movies, anything to do with telling our stories and telling our version of things. There seems to be a block towards it. You know, you don't have people coming out of America telling the quintessential American story that it's lapped up by everybody.
Yes.
Whereas, you know, same from Russia. Oh, you know, you've been demonized in Russia. You've been, you know, the Russians hate you. Well, we want you. You know, whatever you want to say, we're here to hear. But, you know, it's just, I'm not anti-America. I'm not anti-Russia. I live in America. My husband is American. I love him dearly. I love my life here. I don't think I would have had, because of the family that I come from, I don't think I would have had the freedom in Jamaica to write the way that I have here. Right? There is a sense of security that I have here. And when I say security, I mean just security of self, of being able to be vulnerable, that I don't think I would have had in Jamaica.
So why do you think so?
Because my family, I mean, you have to understand, at one point in my family, there were 90 of us, and we
Nice.
all lived within a 5 mile radius of each other.
Mhm.
You know, every decision was made by committee. So that did not really bode well for creativity.
Put you in a box.
Yeah, you know, the most important letters for a girl were the 3 letters in front of our name.
Wow.
We weren't so interested in the ones behind it.
Mhm. Wow. So you felt stifled in Jamaica. That's well, I guess, you know, I guess with that conservative mindset, I can understand that, you know, there's no freedom to be liberal and really explore your thought. Because I can imagine if you tried to write about transsexualism and homosexuality, you would probably be laughed out of Jamaica.
Well, the thing is, I couldn't write about either of those things because I don't know about those things.
Yeah, but
And
I'm just saying for per se, you know, if you even ventured, if that was your lane, if you had ventured into that, you probably wouldn't have gotten anywhere. You probably would have died from being stifled, from being choked to death.
that's an interesting, that's a little bit different than what I am referring to, because when I was growing up
Mm,
in Jamaica, the most important thing was to marry the right person,
mm,
you know, and to secure your position in society, and to secure a position for your children in society,
mm,
etc., etc. I mean, that's kind of the Caribbean way, you
mm,
know. A woman is taught to entice a man, get married, have a good family, make sure you have the home, make sure you have the car, and
mm,
the 2.5 children.
mm,
That was something when, you know, in the 80s that I was told I had to do.
mm,
I wasn't encouraged to do anything apart from find a husband.
mm,
So that in itself is what I refer to as being stifling.
mm,
I think what you're referring to is more of a societal thing that, again, that's going to change too, and I see it changing now.
mm,
But if anybody in Jamaica wanted to write about those two things,
mm,
I would encourage it, because again, I think hearing it from the Caribbean perspective
mm.
would be very different from hearing it from the American,
Yes.
the Russian, the Ukrainian, any other perspective.
Mm,
Because I honestly feel our perspective is unique.
mm. Because we sit around the border, you know, we sit right at the fulcrum of Europe and the United States, and now even Eastern Europe now. So yeah, we sit right at the fulcrum right there. And so,
Like I said, we were where the worldwide trading system began.
yep.
You know, you imported slaves and you took back rum and sugar. And you have to remember that in the Caribbean, it wasn't only the majority, yes, were African slaves, by a huge percentage they were African slaves.
Mm,
But before them, there was the Irish.
mm,
Cromwell deported all the Irish Catholics out of Ireland and sent them to Barbados and Jamaica,
mm,
mostly to Barbados.
mm,
And then you have had all the wars,
mm.
you know, England and Scotland, and they dumped all their prisoners in the Caribbean
Yeah,
because they didn't want them in England, you
yeah.
know. Pirates, a lot of the pirates that were on these ships were Shanghaied um, people from that they had Shanghaied met poor English boys
Mm,
in ports and everything,
mm,
put them on frigates run by the British Marines,
mm.
and they ran away when they could, and they became pirates.
Yeah.
So the Caribbean is interesting in that almost everybody that ended up in the Caribbean came there by force
Mm-hmm.
or came because they had nowhere else to
Let's
go.
go. Yeah, they were running from something. That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's the history. That's the history right there. And you hit the nail around the head, man. And even to this day, it's still the same way because you have expats right into the Caribbean from Eastern Europe or from Asia. They're looking to get away from their countries to come here. Have you heard about this citizenship by investment program that most of these Eastern Caribbean countries have? Yeah. They're being flooded with requests on a daily basis from people trying to escape Eastern Europe and China, trying to get, and even the Middle East, trying to get passports, trying to start a new life in the Caribbean. It's just amazing how we, from back then, 100, 200 years ago, it's still the same thing right here today. And they're still exploiting the labor, the cheap labor here.
Well, yeah, if you go to Trinidad, the cheap labor now is the Venezuelans.
Yes.
If there are parts of the Caribbean where the cheap labor is the Filipinos.
Yeah. And the Bahamas is the Haitians.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, I don't understand how human beings don't learn from history. I honestly don't understand how they keep repeating the same things over and over again. And I honestly feel that the only place that is going to be able to tell this in an effectual way to actually effect change in a mentality is from the Caribbean, because man, how many more years? You wiped out the Indians. I mean, you have to understand something. There's still Indians in America, right?
Yes.
There's still Indians in South America.
Yes.
There are none in the Caribbean. I mean, they wiped them out.
They killed them all. I'm so shocked by that though, Lynda. I mean, the Spanish and the English came, they killed them all. They killed every last one.
But it's not only the English and the Spanish. The French were there, the Dutch were there, the Portuguese were there. Everybody everybody came.
They killed
everybody came. And I mean, it's pretty fascinating when you think about it. It's really quite fascinating. African kings, I mean, they consolidated their power and their kingdoms by selling their prisoners to the Europeans.
Yep.
So it's what is amazing to me, and what I take most pride in being a Jamaican and a Caribbean, is that you have done everything humanly possible to break us.
Yep.
We have survived. We are one of the few places where you can point to an ancestry of 8 generations and longer. Right? Because once we get there, we don't go. There's nowhere for us to go. Right? So we stay there, and we have built an incredible society, complete with its own cuisine, its own music track. We all have our own soundtrack.
Redemption song.
No, I mean, we have reggae, we have calypso, we have soca, we have mento. All of that came from us. America can't claim it, Russia can't. That was us. We created a society of inclusion where I look the way that I do, and my first cousin is 6 shades darker than I, but she's my first cousin.
Wow.
So this is the beauty of the society of inclusion that we created. I like to say that we are where the world collided with such force that the magma it brought forth is going to build the bridge to reconciling our past and walking into our future together. And no other society except for the West Indian Caribbean society can claim that honor or can claim that heritage.
Yeah.
We have so much to teach the world.
Yes.
Because we lived in one love. We did.
You are a proud Jamaican, Lynda. I have to say that. You are a proud Jamaican.
I'm a very proud Jamaican. I'm a very proud West Indian Caribbean person.
I find it funny you say West Indian. Anyway, I wouldn't go back there. That was our early conversation. I wouldn't go back there. So, but along with your writings, how many books you have out now, Lynda?
I have 2 that have been published. I'm sitting on I Am Cuba, waiting for a traditional publisher, although I'm getting daily emails asking me to release it. But I'm gonna hold on to it for a while because I think it's a very important story, just because of the topic, and I think that I think it's something that we need to, the world needs to hear. So I'm waiting for exactly the right person, and then I'm
I would read
working.
that.
Sorry.
I want to read that as well because from what you said, you painted a very vibrant picture of what the dynamics were with regard to the different political shades and landscape. So I want to read that. I want to see what you have to say with that one. Yeah, I do.
Friendship Estate has really opened a lot of worlds for me, and
Okay.
well, you know, it's interesting because their Friendship Estate is based, it's the story of two brothers, but it's really the story of the three women that crafted these brothers and, you know,
Wow.
molded them.
Okay.
And somebody came to me the other day, like a year ago, and said, you know, the women in Friendship Estate is really where the story is. You need to start telling the story about the women. And I thought, oh my God, that's so fascinating. And I went back and looked at these women. You know, one is Scottish, one is African, and there's even one in there about an Irish woman who gets sold into gets sold to be a woman, sold to be a wife, and her husband rejects her.
Wow.
But there's the story of these women really are it kind of encompasses all the stories of the women in the Caribbean, because we were made to be the nucleus of the family. You know, we were made to hold everything together. I was taught that, you know, when I was growing up, I was taught to go to the supermarket. I was taught to cook. I was taught, my brother wasn't taught those things. I was taught those things, you know, because we took care of the hearth and the home. That was our job. And it's turned into a lot of us having to do a lot more than that. We've done much more than that. We've had to be breadwinners. We've had to,
Yes.
you know, we've had to teach men to be men.
Yes. Yes. And
You
that's
know,
a difficult job within itself, you know.
yeah.
How did you struggle with that? Because I'll go on a limb and say I don't think a woman really could teach a man how to be a man.
You'd be surprised.
I'd be surprised.
You'd be very, very surprised because
I grew up in a single parent home, Lynda, and trust me, there's something I wish my father was here to tell me about. I miss him every day when I think about some of the things I missed out, especially with dealing with women, how to get along with men my own age. I miss that. I miss that. I wish he was here. But I understand for the best of all of us, it was better that he wasn't here. But man, I wish he was, you know, so I could learn. But I understand. I understand how it went. The late 80s, the 80s, the early 80s, but the entire 80s was a dark period for the Caribbean in particular. We lost a lot of young people at that time due to the drug epidemic and all that kind of new wave, new age liberalism that came into the world from the United States. And it isn't just with the Caribbean, you know, there were a lot of young people in the 80s in the United States that were lost, you know, due to that sexual revolution that was spilling over from the 1970s into the 80s, and then the drug culture that seeped into the 80s that killed a lot of African American homes and homes all around the United States and in the Caribbean. So we lost a lot of people like that, you know.
well, you see, it wasn't only African American homes that ravaged as well.
I know.
It ravaged everybody.
Yes.
I mean, the whole Appalachian area here of America, you can't even. It almost doesn't exist. That entire culture has almost disappeared.
Wow.
Because of drug use, and that's a beautiful, vibrant society as well that is going to disappear.
Yes.
Because of drug use. And that's pharmaceutical drugs. That's not even, you know, plant-based. Yeah.
Why, from your perspective, Lynda, why are people in so much pain in the United States? Why are people in so much pain with all the bounty and all the blessings they've been blessed with the United States? Why are they in so much pain?
Because I think that's why they don't appreciate what they have.
Wow.
I mean, you came from the Caribbean. You came from a single mother, and I come from the Caribbean. I came up from a family, but I can guarantee you and I were raised the exact same way. To show respect to our elders.
Yes.
Stand up when a teacher walked into the room.
Yes.
Address them as Miss or Sir.
So, yep.
We were taught that to take a sweetie out of a shop was to shame the family.
Yes.
We were taught that you were Jamaican. Didn't matter the color of your skin, you were Jamaican. Didn't matter what religion you were Jamaican. So we were never ever anything first. We were never African Jamaican. We were never white Jamaican. We were never Chinese Jamaican. We were all raised as Jamaican. We were all raised as Bahamians. We were all raised as Bajans, whatever you want to call.
Yeah.
We were never anything else first. We all sounded the same. We all spoke the same. We all listened to the same music. And even in school, we were, as much as you want to cuss the English system or say that it's part of the colonial system, there was a rigidity to it and a continuity to it.
Yes.
That left us with certain standards.
Yes, indeed.
That has eroded in America. And I think while we were taught to appreciate not only what we had over what we didn't have, we were also taught to appreciate our culture because we had one common culture.
Yes.
And that, I think, is the main issue here in America. There are varying degrees of how you were raised. We never experienced that in the Caribbean.
Yeah. So everybody's trying to be different. They're trying their own individuality, right? Everyone wants to be an African American or a Chinese American first, rather than just being American. You know?
Yeah. I don't know how you can identify with one thing if you're something else first.
Yes.
And that's something we were never taught in the Caribbean. You know, we were always Jamaican.
And this COVID-19 hasn't brought everybody back together.
Man, I don't know what COVID-19 did. I find people post COVID-19 to be very selfish, very self-involved, very rude. I find my patience is a lot less with people. And I have found that I like being insular. I mean, I always liked my own company, I'll be honest with you, because, you know, writing is, you'll never be alone with a book in your hand.
Yes.
So as a writer, I have a lot of friends and a lot of places to go and things to go just in my mind. So I've always liked that solitary type of behavior. But I find that I don't know. We could have, as with anything in the world, we could have come out of this with a better perspective, but we didn't. So another lost opportunity.
Yeah. God has to speak to us again, Lynda. God has to speak to us again. It's so sad, right? Yeah.
Well, you know something, I have a different take on God. I was raised in a religious home, and I don't say that I reject religion, but in researching and writing books, I think I've come to understand, like anything else, it benefits one more than it benefits the other. And I firmly believe, I believe that the 10 Commandments were the only true edicts that God gave us to live by. And I believe that God gave us a conscience and he gave us free will. And I believe that God resides within all of us.
Yes.
and it's up to us to decide if we're going to be good or we're going to be bad.
Yeah, yeah. Going to be wicked or we're going to be decent people. That's true. That's true, Lynda. So I guess it's safe to say that you have not found your equilibrium as a result of COVID-19, or you've gotten back to your happy space, or you're back to that, you're being greeted with these mean and rude and surly people now, and it's really put you back into a place where you don't want to be with regard to your writing and your mental space.
You know what? My mental space when I'm writing is my mental space. I try really hard not to be influenced. I love research. I do a lot of research, and it's in researching things that spark my imagination, and that's where my stories come from. So it's not necessarily a people-driven type of thing. I write because it's something I'm compelled to do, and I find stories in the strangest of places. I mean, this new book that I'm writing, I found it just from having conversations with somebody that I met. And I found him to be such an interesting person that this whole story came out of just talking to him. So that was fascinating to me. And he feeds it. I mean, he sends me things. It's quite an interesting relationship. I've never had a writing relationship like that before, because he's almost like a muse. And he'll say things or he'll do things, and that's like, that's great for chapter 4. That's great for chapter 5. So it's an interesting thing. And I think one of the beautiful things that I found out about writing is that it's an evolution.
Yes.
If you have to be better than your next book. Every book has to be better than the last one.
Yes.
And I really try to aspire to that, to being a better crafter of stories.
And learning your craft. That's good. Lynda, I was fully up, man. So any final thoughts you have, Lynda?
I do have one final thought, and I want to give you and your listeners a little bit of a gift from me. Sometimes when I can't write or something is not coming, I write little stories and I call them prequels. So if you go to my website, which is Lynda, Lynda R Edwards.com. So LYNDAREDWARDS.com. And you sign up for my newsletter, you will get this gift, which is a downloadable version of the prequels. And in the prequels, it has a pre-story to Redemption Songs, The Road to Redemption. And it talks about some of the characters. For Friendship Estate, I talked about Lyndon Holborn, which is the character that the book starts with. And in the final portion of it is the prequel to I Am Cuba.
Wow, Lynda, that's quite a treat. That's quite a treat. Lynda, LYNDAREDWARDS.
Yeah. It's my name, Lynda R Edwards. So LyndaREdwards.com. And of course, after every story, I have to put in a recipe for rum, to use rum. What are we without rum?
Yeah, what are we without rum? Yeah. The Caribbean is built on rum.
It is. And so yeah, that's it. And Redemption Songs, like I said, is available.
Yes.
Amazon. This is a picture that my husband took in Jamaica, funnily enough, that I had to use for the cover. I absolutely loved it. And then this is Friendship Estate. The cover for Friendship Estate. And I'm saving one of these for you, my friend.
Yes. Thank you. I'll be looking out for it, Lynda. I will. Thank you so much, Lynda, for your time. I really appreciate this has been a delightful conversation. I really appreciate you coming on at such short notice to do this interview with me, man. I really appreciate it. I hope
like I said, you've always been there for me. And every time I call you and say, you need to talk to this person, or I think you like this thing, you're always there. And I love your newsletters. And you're one of these voices in the Caribbean that really needs to be heard. And I just want you to know that I appreciate you.
Yes.
I appreciate what you're doing, and please keep it up because you're a voice. You're a
Thank
voice for us.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate it, man. It encourages me now. I feel encouraged. Thank you so much. Lynda R Edwards, author, Jamaican author with 3 hot new books out that you must go take a look at. Go to our website, lyndaredwards.com. So thank you, Lynda. I hope you enjoy your Sunday.
All the best, Yuri.
Thank you.